You don't know how many times people have said, Christian, I think you have an old, like my supervisor, she says it all the time. She's like, I think you have an old soul. Like, and I'm like, well, I've seen it all. Like I've done it all. I've seen it all. And there's so many lessons in trauma, and there's so many lessons in adversity. And let me be the first to tell you, adversity does not discriminate, right? It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how high in life you are or how low you are in life. It will get you when you least expect it. And, at these experiences that I've had, they somewhat prepare me for this stuff. But when you look at entrepreneurs, right, some of the most successful people in this world come from broken homes and troubled childhoods and poverty and things like that. And it's because they've been able to navigate this stuff that when they're faced with it in business or in, real life, they can navigate the chaos. They can navigate adversity, and they're so good at it.
ADHD Rewired, episode 381. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Christian Morrow. Christian currently works in higher education, where he recruits for Miami University. He works directly with prospective college students, counselors, and faculty every semester. Diagnosed with ADHD as a child, Christian has learned to navigate both a personal and professional life with ADHD, as well as coping with tragedy in his personal life. From dealing with a parent with a addiction to the loss of a parent to suicide while in college, Christian has developed a new perspective about life, resiliency, and self-discovery. Christian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you bringing me on today.
Absolutely. And I know too that right before we hit record, part of your story has changed, I think, from the time you sent me that bio.
Yeah. Back in April, on April 7th, I found out that my father had passed away pretty unexpectedly. So he was 64 and pretty young. So that was unexpected. And we just kind of spent the last month processing that, which has been, as you can imagine, interesting, but here we are.
Here we are. So let's start at kind of what it was like for you growing up, your relationships with your mom and family, and so take us through that.
Sure. Well, there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm so sorry for using that term. I promise after grad school I would never say unpack. Here we are. So I was diagnosed with, back then it was ADD at the time. My pediatrician diagnosed me when I was in the second or third grade. I think it was pretty evident. I was a very rambunctious little guy. I was always the center of attention, like at parties or at dinners and stuff like that. I was always the entertainer. And I think it was great for a while. Always making people laugh. I always knew how to work a room, and I was constantly making, relatives and stuff just laugh. And then it got to the point where that spilled over into the classroom. And I was recently looking at all of my report cards and transcripts from grade school and middle school and stuff. And they all, had this one common theme. Has the potential to do better, very distracting, talks too much to other students, talks while the teacher is speaking and all that good stuff. So it was pretty evident. And I think in the third grade, my parents put me on Adderall, I believe it was. And it worked for a little while. But then it kind of just it kind of changed who I was, right? It really muted my creativity and kind of my jubilance, if you will. It was, and it really concerned my parents. I remember my mom would say things like, he's just not himself. That's not okay. So then we switched it. I think we tried Stratera, which that was even worse. I didn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was just very kind of like, just started to turn into like an introverted kid, which just wasn't me at the time. It was very different. And then I think we got up into middle school and, I think my mom gave me the opportunity to decide if I wanted to stay on it or get off it. And I think in late middle school, I decided to get off it. And then, I got back to being myself, but my grades and other things just suffered. I mean, I was focused, all throughout high school. I was at best, average student, and sometimes not even that.
Can I ask you in reflection, what do you think of your mom giving you that choice in middle school?
I wish she would have encouraged me to stick it out a little bit longer. I also wish she would have pursued other opportunities. But yeah, it's, of course I don't blame her for any of that, but it's, I wish we would have stuck it out a little bit longer. But yeah, fast forward through college and I wasn't focused. I was focused on stupid things like girls and friends and car and just silly stuff. And I didn't care about my GPA.
Stupid thing. I mean, those are some of the things that give life joy and fun. And, but when we're in college and we're only focusing on that, that's, there's a much cheaper way to focus on those things. You don't have to go to college. Just live near a college.
No, that's exactly right. And I'll back up a little bit. So, 1995, my dad was diagnosed with leukemia. So at that time I was 3 years old. And so I don't remember, all the nuances, all the, details, but I do remember, my dad would come home and all of a sudden he was bald and he was sickly and thin. And that's kind of where, that's kind of where the trauma started, I think, really for me. And my life became very hectic from that point on. My parents didn't think that he was going to survive. He ended up getting in 96 or 97, he got a bone marrow transplanted from his sister, and that saved him, but it was very scary. And then fast forward, my parents were both entrepreneurs and they both did very, very well in life. My mom owned a preschool, a learning center for about 90 kids and managed, all these teachers. And my dad was a master electrician and did residential or commercial real estate. And that's what he did. But, with money comes other things. And they ended up getting a divorce in 2001. And I remember that the day my dad left, my parents told me, dad's going to be leaving. He's going to live somewhere different. And then that's kind of when he began his trajectory of addiction. And again, when you give somebody too much money and too much freedom, I think, and he was undiagnosed, but it was also pretty evident that he had ADHD himself. And I think that just, anyway, so for the next 3 or 4 years, it was just pure chaos. My mom sold her business. My dad lost everything he had to addiction. He was very much into cocaine, and that was a huge problem. He lost all of his properties, and my mom was fighting to salvage, what bit of the family we had for 3 or 4 years.
How you were? This was high school, you said?
No, so this was from about 2001 to about 2006. Yeah.
So how old were you then?
So I was 9 years old when my parents split. And then, so pretty much all of my adolescence, right? Like,
and what was your understanding at the time around his, the addiction?
It was just, there was something wrong with dad, mm-hmm. There was just something wrong. Something wasn't right. And of course, you internalize that. And, that's been one of the hardest things. And it's really affected my self-confidence and my self-worth because, of course, my sister and I, we talk about it now, and she's 9 years older than me, but we talk about how dad traded us and family in for this other stuff and this not so good stuff. And I mean, it got to the point where he would just lay in bed all day long, and he would miss his every other weekend visits and things like that. I remember me and my mom went over to his house one time, and it was my weekend to be with him. And I love my dad. Like, he was incredible. Like when I was young, I have these great memories of him going boating and taking me fishing, and he was incredibly smart and mechanically inclined. He was an incredible guy. And sometimes I think he was too smart for his own good. But I remember we walked into his house and we hadn't heard from him for weeks. And there was just all these people that we didn't know. There was just people there. And I remember being a little boy and I was like, Mom, who are these people? And, of course, my mom raised hell through this place, kicked all these people out, found my dad up. And it was just, it was chaos.
Mm.
So that's when it started with Mom, right? She really got depressed, right? She had a lot of, anxiety and anytime somebody came to the door at our home, it was just this level of fear that was just unparalleled, because we didn't know if somebody was going to tell us that Dad was dead, or if he was arrested, or if he, what was going on. So a lot of anxiety as a child, as a kid.
Did you know that was the fear? Anytime someone would come to the door, or was that more like your mom, her fear?
That was my personal fear.
So
yeah.
That's a lot to
yeah. And I still carry that with me today. I in my house that I own for the last 6 years, I still don't have a doorbell.
for that reason.
I unwired it, not for that reason, but I don't know. It's tough to explain. I've got the ring and all that stuff. So I know, when people come to my door anyway, it goes to my phone rather. So,
okay.
But yeah, I was in no hurry to rewire a new doorbell when I bought my house. Anyway. So yeah, fast forward, Mom slept a lot, she slept all day long, and she sold her business, which was kind of her driving factor. That was what she lived for. She was a huge member of the community here in the suburb of Cincinnati, and she helped so many children and families. And she was an incredible woman. I mean, she just had this aura about her. She incredible, zest for life and all this stuff. And then just to see her go from that to this, like I said, introverted, meek, stoic woman was it was unreal. Meanwhile, I'm managing, trying to be a good student and trying to process all this stuff while, of course, having ADHD. So I didn't care about any of that stuff. I didn't care about school. There was other stuff going on. And then Dad came home. My parents were divorced, and my mom checked him into a rehabilitation center, and he was there for a few months, and we went and visited him, and he begged her to let him come home. And so she did, once he completed the program, of course. And then, so he actually lived with us, which was, that dynamic in itself is a little dysfunctional, but it worked for a while. All through high school, I kind of, we rehabbed that relationship that we had, the father-son relationship, and we would do things together. And yeah, it was, that was good. But for my dad and for my mom and dad, it was not good.
Was there a lot of fighting, or was it just what was that like?
I think there was a lot of expectations that Dad, I think my mom wanted to try to salvage their relationship, and he just kind of still had his mindset on other things. And it was just, it was very different. And so there was, from about 2007 to about 2013, things were okay, for about, 6 years or so. Things were okay. Things were all right. And then I went off I was going to, become an electrician just like my dad. And I sat for the apprentice exam, and I did really well on that. And I had no interest in college whatsoever. But then one day I just realized, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I can't focus on one thing and do that every day, day in and day out. I would be miserable. I would die. And so I decided to go to Miami University. Of course, I had to start out at one of our regional campuses in Hamilton, Ohio. It's Miami University Regionals. And I wanted to become a teacher. I really wanted to teach. I have this love for education and this passion for education and again, helping people.
Did you have some really good teachers when you were growing up?
I had some really good ones, and I had some really bad ones. I had some terrible ones, but I had some incredible ones. Yeah. And I was a different student. I mean, having ADHD and being a little boy is tough. You have a lot of teachers that absolutely hate you, and I don't blame them. I really don't. I learned a little bit differently, but I wasn't stupid. But I was a challenge, and I challenged teachers, And I also did things my way. Every once in a while I would do things and the teachers would be like, why are you doing it like this? I'm like, I don't know, but it works. Like I constantly wrote in cursive. I always wrote in cursive. I hated writing in print. And finally some teacher was like, why do you do that? I'm like, because it's faster. It's more efficient. And to this day, I still write in cursive. I just don't write in print because it looks like garbage.
And now they don't even teach it anymore.
I write. Yeah. And yeah, my friends would all make fun of me. They go, dude, why do you write like a girl? And I'm like, it's faster.
They don't make fun of my beautiful L's, the loops and everything, it's
exactly. Yeah. That capitalized L is gorgeous, man. Anyway. So yeah, I get to college. I'm still a pretty crap student. Like I had no business, being there for the first couple of years. And then I started working and it started getting to the point where I spent less and less time at home because I hated the dynamic of, mom was depressed. She was depressed a lot. She slept a lot. And I think she was kind of trying to replace the relationship that she had with my dad and kind of replace that with me sometimes. And I could recognize that. I could see that. And so I distanced myself from them, but I didn't have enough courage to leave them and go off and live on campus. So I was able to commute for a couple of years and then I lived on campus, but I got put on academic probation, or excuse me, not probation, academic warning. I had like a 2.0 or 2.1 or something like that. And I was like, I remember I was a lifeguard at Kings Island and I came home and there was this letter from Miami and they're like, you're on academic warning. If you don't get this up, you're going to go on probation. I was like, I can't do this. I'm not stupid. Like this is horrible. And that's really when it kicked into gear. And I was like, I really need to make this work. And so, I picked up my grades. I started doing really well. But then things at home got pretty bad. Mom got very bad. So, just sleeping a lot and doing certain things that I recognize. So, we can talk about that in a minute, I suppose.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break. And, when we come back, we'll continue with that story. So Christian, we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from Adult Study Hall. Adult Study Hall is your place, your pace, and your ADHD-friendly co-working space. The Adult Study Hall membership community is officially open. And if you are listening to this on the day it came out, we opened our virtual doors to the Adult Study Hall membership community yesterday to all of our ADHD friends around the world. We are out of the beta phase and are continuing to add more and more events and sessions each week. So if you want to join me and other people with ADHD to cross off those to-dos one by one to done, go to adultstudyhall.com and sign up. What is included in your membership? For only $19.99, you will get access to Adult Study Hall 24/7, which is our Zoom room that is opened, you guessed it, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No matter your location or time zone, ASH 24/7. ASH is short for Adult Study Hall. Think of it as your go-to virtual coffee shop. You don't even need to drive there. You can pick your own music and wear your pajamas, and no one's going to mess up your coffee order. Then we have our ASH Plus sessions, like Taskbusters every Thursday, which is a structured 2-hour session with a midway check-in to tackle your dreaded tasks. A cleaning and decluttering session every Saturday with that same format, except for maybe cleaning that room or corner you haven't touched in a while. And facilitated career-focused sessions on Tuesday called CASH. That's C-A-ASH, C-A-A-S-H. Career Accelerator, ASH Plus, to work on resumes or your LinkedIn profile and more. All of our ASH Plus sessions are hosted by our wonderful coaching group alumni. I will also be hosting on Wednesday a Pomodoro dance party. This will be 2 hours long. We will work for 25-minute sprints and then take a 5-minute dance break. While dancing is required, dance skills are not. So just you and your willingness to take a break with a little fun and then get back to work. We also have 2 workout sessions that we just scheduled on Tuesday and Thursdays. Every day of the week, we have members from our coaching group alumni community who jump in for an hour or 2 in our ASH 24/7 room. So it's a guarantee you're going to have some co-working company during those hours. And did you know you can host your own ASH 24/7 too? Let everyone know that you're going to be there and that you're going to be working on something so that others can join. Membership and access to the Adult Study Hall membership community is only $19.99 a month. You'll get access to ASH Plus and all of our current and future ASH Plus sessions and a thriving community of people who just get it. Join us. It really is your place at your pace. This is your ADHD-friendly co-working space. You can join us by going to adultstudyhall.com. That's adultstudyhall.com. I'll see you there. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from ADHD Rewired's coaching community, which includes our coaching and accountability groups and our alumni membership community. I am recording this just about an hour after we wrapped up our final session for our 24th season. Our 25th season of coaching and accountability groups begins July 7th. And I'm about 30 minutes away from meeting with what will probably be our last few people to join our summer coaching groups. But just in case one of those spots doesn't get filled and you are still interested in joining, go check out the website at coachingrewired.com and see if there are any spots left. If there are, get a hold of us and we'll let you know the next steps. But if you can't do it this summer and fall is going to work better for you, go right now to coachingrewired.com and add your name to our fall interest list. Our coaching members not only learn how to plan for the short term, the long haul, or how to make a more ADHD-friendly to-do list. Season after season, one of the biggest insights our members discover is the impact and strength of having a community of people who truly understand what it's like to have ADHD. As I mentioned, we just finished up our very last session, and we had one of our members in one of my groups who actually brought me to tears a bit, saying that because of this group, it restored her faith in humanity. And that really is what the power of these groups can do. It is truly extraordinary. And I hope that if you are looking for something because you know that you can do better and you want a community and you want to just live a better life having ADHD, then come on over to coachingrewired.com and get ready to rewrite your ADHD story. Head on over to coachingrewired.com and either see if there might be one spot left for our summer sessions or get your name added to the fall interest list. And for all of our upcoming coaching group members, don't forget to listen to The One Thing by Gary Keller. We do ask that all of our coaching members read this book before we start. So whether you're joining us this summer or you're waiting to the fall, it might be a good idea to start that now. And if you want to learn more about our intensive online coaching and accountability groups, go to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. And we are back. All right. So where we left off before the break, you were talking about your kind of being in college and kind of struggling there. You were put on academic warning. And then why don't you pick it up from there?
Yeah. So once I realized I was on academic warning, I just kind of had that conversation with myself and I said, you need to change this. You need to come up with strategies and you need to do things. So I started studying, started taking notes, and I started paying attention in class, which was very difficult for me. And I actually talked to the school psychologist up at school, up in college, and he prescribed Adderall. And again, I took it for a while and it worked very, very well. Did some good things, but then again, it just kind of made me feel like I wasn't myself. And so I got off of it again. And then distractions came, from work and family things. And like I said, my mom just kind of started slipping more and more into this depressive state. And I became less of this affable guy, the guy that I knew I was, and this kind of open people person. And I was kind of living two lives, right? I was living my life up at college and doing the thing that I wanted to do and try to be successful, but I was also trying to make sure that my family was okay and trying to be that middleman for my parents. And it just wasn't working. So we did that for a few years, and I stayed out of the house as much as I possibly could. I mean, I worked 25 to 30 hours. Like I had to put myself through school, and I was doing that and just, trying to stay focused, which again is extremely hard when you've got ADHD and you've also got all these other factors and all these other distractions in life. So that's when I started to put together strategies for myself of, becoming more organized. And this is also where the OCD kicked in. So I was recently diagnosed with OCD as a trauma response from all of this. And it was, to the point where my bedroom at home was like perfectly organized, and like, everything was in its perfect place, and my car and everything had to be super clean because that was the stuff I could control. I couldn't control this other stuff that was happening at home. And so that combined with the ADHD was a real challenge for me.
Say more about the OCD as a trauma response.
So again, when I was a kid and things happened, obviously I had no control over any of it. I was 3-4 years old when dad got sick. And then I was just, 9 or 10 when the addiction started. And then, mom got depressed. I didn't have control over that stuff. I can't change people. And I think that kind of manifested itself into what can I control? Like what can I do? And that became, my physical appearance, my cleanliness of my, bedroom or car or something like that. And then I became very competitive. I was extremely competitive. I'd go to work and I just had to be the best at everything. And, I hated who I was for a good 5 or 6 years. And I didn't realize what was going on. But anyway, so about 2013, things kind of really hit ahead. My parents just weren't doing well. I was gone a lot, and I was preparing for the end of undergrad, and I had switched my major. After student teaching, I realized that I did not want to teach middle schoolers. So I switched my major.
What about middle schoolers? Did you not like?
Oh man, it wasn't even the students, to be honest with you. It was 2013. So it was like just when the Common Core had really hit the scene, and there was so much red tape surrounding that. And the teacher, like even the host teachers and my student teacher, they literally, I had one teacher literally say, if I have students, if my kids decide to pursue education as a major, I won't pay for college because it's gotten this bad. And I'm so glad, wow. I'm glad I'm not in that field right now, because I just see teachers struggling and being mistreated, and it's awful. So I love teachers. Teachers deserve so much more than they get. But yeah, I made that decision to switch. And then I had started the process of looking at law school at the University of Cincinnati. I was meeting with an academic advisor once a week, and we started the paperwork for that. And I got really involved in my senior year. And that was 2015. I took the victory lap, of course, because I changed my major so late. Yes. Oh, you did too?
Oh, yes. Yes. all the great ones. There are a lot of parallels, and I think in our stories, including the GPA and the outset.
Yeah. Well, so I did that, and I got really involved in law and politics, and I went to DC with a student organization and stuff. And I just really did some great things. And again, I think it was more out of this effort to be not at home and just do other things. And I wanted to set myself up. And in the back of my mind, I knew that I'm going to have to leave my mom one day, and that's going to be incredibly hard for her. And I was paralyzed by that thought. And so it was April 10th, the morning of April 10th, 2015. I was serving on a funds allocation committee for the student organizations at Miami University. And we had taken like a recess in between presentations, and my dad had called me twice. And I kind of knew, I knew that that's never good when dad calls, especially twice. And I answered the phone, and he just said, "She's gone. Mom's gone." And I think I knew exactly what he was saying, but it's like this wave, this internal wave of like, there's no way, it's just not possible. And it was a weird moment. It was a very strange moment for me. And then so we found out she lost her life to suicide. And I'll never say, no one will ever hear me say that my mom committed suicide.
Yeah, mention that we have talked about that on the podcast before, but for people who haven't listened to the episodes about that, because it is an important distinction.
It is, and when suicide happens, a lot of people immediately they think it's selfish, and they think that these people aren't thinking of others around them. And I'll be the first to admit, yes, I thought that I was very angry at my mom for doing this. I was very mad at her. I thought it was a very selfish thing to do, but she was extremely sick, and she didn't choose that. Right. Mental health is so, dangerously overlooked and swept under the rug, and these diagnoses and medications that are prescribed. I mean, and she had just had a major back surgery. And so she was on antidepressants along with muscle relaxers and Ambien at the same time, which we found out in the toxicology report. So that's a concoction for disaster, no matter who you are. Right. And so I'll never say that she committed suicide. She didn't commit a crime. Yeah, no, I don't use that term. But so that happened. And then it was just like, boom. This is, and I know they say that when something good happens, but it was like, this is the beginning of the rest of your life. So I was 22 years old. I had a month left of college. A few weeks before my 23rd birthday. My birthday's April 29th. And so I was like just thrown into this absolute chaos. And this is where the ADHD stuff really kicks in, because I had to, and my dad just wasn't support. He actually ended up going to the hospital immediately, and just, he wasn't doing well. And I became the executor of her estate at 22 years old.
Oh my gosh.
22. Yeah.
Wow. It's a lot.
It is. I told you it's a lot. And so I was tasked with settling her estate, selling her home, buying my own home, graduating college, starting my life, turning 23, and all of that within the next, few months. And it wasn't good. And I had the person that's my fiance now, we've been together, for almost 7 years now. She was with me the entire time and stood by my side through all of it. So and I'm so ashamed to say, it really damaged me. I became just, you're 22 years old, you're a 23-year-old guy, and you're very egocentric, and you're in that mindset of, I'm still in my youth and in my early 20s and stuff. All of that stopped for me. Right. I had to get organized. I had to do things that I'd never done. And as somebody with ADHD, it was like, what do I do? How do I do this? I've never sold a house before. I've never bought a house before. I'm going to graduate college. I'm going to go on to do these things. And, grad school was put on hold. My life was put on hold. And it shook me. And it shook me. And for the next probably 2 years, maybe 3 years, I was just processing all of this. And so I had to get organized, right? I just really did some strategies that really helped me. I got my first Google Calendar. I started wearing a watch. I started setting all these alarms, just things that I'd never done. And I've never been a good sleeper. I'm a terrible sleeper. I have serious insomnia issues and things like that. I have a terrible sense of time. So it was a huge challenge. And there were things that kind of fell by the wayside when all of this happened, because I just wasn't an organized person. And it took me about 3 years to really catch on to all this and perfect that. And now, being where I am today, I graduated from grad school 1 year ago with a 3.9. I'll add.
Nice. Very nice.
And I got a wonderful home, and it's I have a beautiful fiance and a 4-year-old little girl who are just absolutely incredible. And I look back on all this stuff, and it's like, yes, I had ADHD. Yes, I was a very organized student. Yes, I was a shit student. But I think the ADHD combined with this trauma and this OCD and stuff, it somehow worked its way to where I had to be resilient and be resourceful on my own and figure out what works for me, right? Trial by fire. And there were a lot of fires. There was a lot of failures, and it was scary. And the things I went through So
let's do this. Let's take a quick break. It's the resilience that I think is really kind of highlighted here is something I want to kind of dig into more when we come back. So let's take a quick break and we will be right back. Hey there, ADHD Rewired listeners. Hey, have you checked out all of our other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired podcast network? We've got ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan, which is a great show for parents with kids who have ADHD. Need some quick tips to help manage your ADHD? Will Kerb's got you covered in his show, Hacking Your ADHD. Wondering if it's just you? It's not. ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens gives voice to her peers as an Asian Canadian with ADHD and for everyone with ADHD. And the ADHD Friendly Lifestyle with Moira Mabin is the show for the late diagnosed woman who wants to try different for their ADHD. You can join all of us for an hour of Q&A every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 Eastern. To register for that, go to ADHDrewired.com/events. Our next one is on Tuesday, July 13th. And we will also be joined by one of our new coaches, Coach Roxy Martin, who we might be hearing a new podcast from. We'll have more information about that in upcoming episodes. And don't forget, if you love this show or any of the shows on our podcast network, don't forget to subscribe and leave an honest rating and review. It helps other people find this podcast and all of their podcasts. And it feels good hearing what you guys are thinking about the podcast. So please leave us some reviews and thank you. And if you want to share these podcasts with someone else, the best way to do that is by going to our website, ADHDrewired.com. Click on podcast at the top of the page, and then you'll see the button that says Podcast Network. All of our podcasts and buttons to subscribe to all of them are right there on that page. Or just go to ADHDrewired.com/podcast network. I want to give a quick shout out to Brandon P., who became a patron this week at the $5 a month level. And thanks to all of our patrons who give each month. If you want to say thank you for the podcast and get some cool perks, head on over to ADHDrewired.com. Click on the Patreon tab at the top of the page. For $5 a month, you can get ad-free episodes. At the $25 a month level, you can join us for a monthly coaching call at the fourth Tuesday of every month at 3 p.m. Central. $10 a month patrons can hear an audio recording of that group coaching call that we do once a month. Whatever your reason for giving and whatever amount you're able to give, I am really grateful for you. This podcast is not free to produce, so I really do appreciate everyone's financial support for those who are able to give. The website again to become a patron is ADHDrewired.com/Patreon, or just click the Patreon tab at the top of the page. And thanks. All right, we are back. I want to mention, so right during our quick break, Christian says to me, I realize the story isn't very heavy on the ADHD stuff. But I think that there's when is ADHD just ADHD, right? It is, I think a lot of us come from dysfunctional families, and which may or may not be generations of ADHD. Families whether there's codependency or, addiction or mental illness, it's all part of this greater picture, right? And I think that, it really is amazing. Some of the hardest things that I've dealt with in my life, and I think that probably the same thing would be true for you. It has, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's taught me so much, and it has, really shaped, I think, in a lot of very positive ways, the person that I've become, from having a father who had a brain aneurysm 25 years ago when he was 49, like who really struggled to accept that he had limitations, right? That taught me the value of acceptance, right? Yeah. So you're now engaged to be married. You have a 4-year-old. Your dad just died a month ago.
Yeah.
So you finished your master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
You sold a home, bought a home. How old are you again?
Well, 29. But I feel, I feel like I'm 59. And you don't know how many times people have said, Christian, I think you have an old, like my supervisor, she says it all the time. She's like, I think you have an old soul. Like, and I'm like, well, I've seen it all. Like I've done it all. I've seen it all. And to go back to what you just said, you're so right. There's so many lessons in trauma, and there's so many lessons in adversity. And let me be the first to tell you, adversity does not discriminate. Right? It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how high in life you are or how low you are in life. It will get you when you least expect it. And, at these experiences that I've had, they somewhat prepare me for this stuff. But when you look at entrepreneurs, right, some of the most successful people in this world come from broken homes and troubled childhoods and poverty and things like that. And it's because they've been able to navigate the stuff that when they're faced with it in business or in, real life, they can navigate the chaos. They can navigate adversity, and they're so good at it. And it sounds so weird, but I feel extremely lucky. And this is all part of, my gratitude experience and me working to build that gratitude and be a more grateful person for my life. And a lot of people say, why do you feel like you're lucky? Your life has been crazy. And it's like, yeah, but now I get to live the rest of it. Right. And I get to take these lessons that I've learned and I get to share them with other people, and I get to help people, and I get to help college students and high school students. And it's the best thing in the world to me.
Mm. How are you kind of continuing to, because I'm sure there's still tons that you're still processing.
So I see, I see a therapist, and I recently just got, like last week, I got a prescription for another medicine, Concerta. I haven't started it yet because the insurance is giving my doctor trouble, which I have phenomenal insurance, and that's another thing. Like getting diagnosed with ADHD is a task in it itself, and then paying for it and getting a hold of it. I'm very lucky. Like I said, I have great benefits and public education, health insurance, and all that good stuff. And they're still giving my doctor a hard time for prescribing me ADHD medicine.
I've been taking, ADHD meds for 20 years, and that it's a constant, it's like you need the ADHD meds to go through all the hoops to get your ADHD meds. Yeah. Cause it's just, cause insurance is just, just so many, the system is designed to be confusing because they profit off of that. And I just wanted to send a side note. Thank you. Because 3 times today, I was like, I need to call Walgreens to get my medication refilled because I don't have any left. And I have an appointment on Thursday, but I need to call my doctor to call it in before my appointment. And I totally forgot. So I just wrote down a note that I need to get my Deus refilled. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Hey, no problem. Glad we can work together. But yeah. And I've been to the pharmacy like two or 3 times at this point. And finally the guy was like, your insurance is asking the doctor why he prescribed this one. And if there's a cheaper one and if this and that. And I'm like, dude, I have the best insurance in the business. But anyway, that's another accessibility conversation that we can have for days and days. But, today I see a therapist, and, as I'm actually interviewing for my promotion tomorrow at work for an assistant director of admission. Wow. Job. And as I, get more and more responsibility, the challenge really, staying organized and saying my little toolkit and my little things sometimes aren't enough. And I worry about that. Mm-hmm.
So, Christian, one, I want to just I hope that you can recognize your badassery on everything you've been having to deal with and how you've really, have showed up for it. I also want to ask you, how do you take care of yourself? Because I feel that you have had a life where you felt obligated to take care of others, especially those who were supposed to be taking care of you. So I'm wondering, like, what is that relationship that you have with yourself and self-care?
Well, physical fitness has been a very common theme in my life ever since I was in college. And I think that was part of the obsessive compulsive, but it's also a very healthy thing for me. And when quarantine started, when work from home started, I told myself that I was going to pick up one thing that's productive and do that and focus on that. It started.
And you actually did? I mean, I know a lot of people said they were going to do that.
Oh yeah, no, I did. I went full bore, and that's another thing. I become hyper focused on certain things. I'm sure it'll change.
So what was your thing?
It started off as playing the guitar. I got extremely into that for about a day, and then I got bored of it. And now the guitar just sits there and I dust it off like every other week. And
painting was my thing. I did like 3 paintings.
Yeah. So I switched to running. And I've lost about 25 pounds in the last 14 months. And I've got somebody at work who is she's just encouraged me to really get into that. Shout out to Emily. So if she hears this, thanks, coach. But now I run 5 to 10 miles a week. Lost all kinds of weight, and I love it. And that's the thing, you know, if I had any advice to give to people who recently found out they have ADHD or they're struggling to deal with ADHD, find your thing that pushes you to the limit, but also clears your mind at the same time and just makes you tap into something that you've never tapped into before. And for me, that's running. I think for a lot of people, that's running because it's the hardest thing that you can do. And and I used to lift weights constantly, and to me, that's easy. Lifting weights is easy. I've always been, able to do that, but running, that's a challenge. I've got a new chiropractor, if that tells you anything.
That's, the other piece to it. And I don't know if you, are aware of this or not, but, the more we are learning about trauma, the more we sort of understand this idea that trauma really does live in the body, and doing anything that sort of wakes up the body, whether it's, physical exercise, yoga, even like breath work, stuff that brings awareness and brings us back into the body is so profoundly helpful. And, the more I do this work too, the more and I don't know what the numbers are, but the co-occurrence of ADHD and PTSD, with specifically, complex PTSD, I would venture to say they're probably extraordinarily high. And I think so if we understand that body-based work is helpful for both ADHD and PTSD, to use a phrase from Will Curb, it's one of those things where you get to feed 2 birds with 1 scone. Right. So it's, so you're really into running. What else? Like what else do you do? And cause there's the actions of running, which is fantastic. What about the book, sort of that story that you tell yourself about deserving, about your role and like responsibility? Cause I think that someone who has gone through things like you may have that tendency towards sort of that hyper responsibility that feels like everything is on your shoulders. Do you think that that's something that you kind of feel?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And with that comes a sense of control and feeling like I always need to be in control, and I'll catch myself doing certain things. And my fiance will say, just go with it, or just do it. I had this really weird thing, and I know this is OCD. I won't even start a task or a project or play a board game unless I know I'm going to win or unless I know I'm going to be successful. Oh, no. And so there's the ADHD component of it where I don't feel like it, but then there's the OCD or whatever else that is component of, I don't even want to start unless it's perfect. Like I just hung those shelves behind me.
Yeah.
And I put it off for so long because I was like, it has to be perfect. And I don't even want to start unless I know it's going to be perfect. And I've got plaster walls. And so that's such a pain in the butt for me. So it just, yeah, that makes sense.
I have a number of holes in my walls at home. For the first 2 holes were the learning holes. The second 2 holes were that one worked.
There you go.
So
yeah. Yeah.
Are you working on that? I mean, is that something that you're trying to?
I am. I started gardening. I love, I'm a typical dad. I've got my white New Balance, and I love my lawn, my grass, all organic, built, not bought. I don't have it treated. I treat it myself. But my fiance and I, we went to a nursery here in Cincinnati over the weekend, and we got a bunch of flowers and stuff. And I think I want to give that a go, because that's like something that you have to have patience for, and you have to be delicate with, which I'm not. I'm just not a delicate person, right? Like, I love extreme sports. I love pushing the limits, and I love all this impulsive stuff. But gardening is like, you're on something else's time. Like, you're not on your own time here. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So we're going to try that.
Let me ask you this. So growing up in the way that you did, obviously shapes you. How does it shape you as a dad?
Like I said at the beginning of this conversation, I do have memories of my dad. He was an incredible guy. He was a good looking guy. He, loved fishing, loved boating, loved being outdoors. He was hilarious. He loved candy, notorious sweet tooth guy, but he was a rock star, man. And I've still got those memories. Same with my mom. She was an entrepreneur. She was a leader. She gave herself to so many people. And that's the stuff that I take with me. That's the stuff that I know that if I can work on myself, and if I can do therapy and do whatever it takes to hone in on that stuff and give that to my daughter, because I've already learned how to not do the bad stuff. I've learned what not to do. Right. And that's the biggest lesson that I have from my parents, is what not to do, because they gave me both. And so, just giving her those precious moments, staying off my cell phone and not focusing on stupid things, and not focusing on materialistic things and what car I drive and how big my house is and stuff like that, but rather how much time we spend together, because anything can happen. So
sounds like you're focusing on what matters.
I hope so. I'm trying.
So if you were to, I don't know, you're a month out of the loss of your dad. I mean, and I sometimes wonder when I talk to someone, who's recently lost a parent, and then they're talking about it, it's like, has it really hit you yet?
It did.
Yeah.
It did. But it was one of those things where, my dad was never well. We always joked he had 9 lives, and he was never well. It was natural. Of all things, it was natural causes. He died of COPD, and so I half expected it for the last 6 years. I really did.
So it's probably a sense of relief.
A little bit, yeah. And he and I had salvaged our relationship, and I let go of a lot of regret. And I told him that I loved him a lot, and he loved me, and he was so proud of me. And he was he loved my home, my house, and he loved my daughter. And the worst part is my daughter, for her to not have her papaw. Because their tradition was to decorate the Christmas tree every year together for the last three years or so. So, but no, it definitely hit me. We're just processing that in the best way that we can.
Christian, thank you so much for sharing your story. If there is like a key takeaway or just an insight from, your story to where you are now that you want listeners to really kind of think about and take away from this conversation, what would you want that to be?
So I was reading an article or a book or a TED Talk. I never know anymore. There's so much information out there in the lithosphere. And so there was a quote. It was, don't lose what you have to what you've lost. Right. And so it's like, put that stuff in the rearview mirror, focus on what's important, focus on the future and who you want to be, and let that guide you. Yeah. And ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. Please ask for help. There's so many resources and people out there who can help you. If my mom would have just let go of a couple of things and just asked for help, I think we would be in a different spot. But here we are. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I hope this is helpful for listeners, and let people know that they're also not alone, because I think we're all going through something. So Christian, thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me, Eric. I really appreciate it.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHDrewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, ADHDrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus yet, check out Brene Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at ADHDrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.